I have some regrets in life. I regret not studying more in school. I regret not being artistic. I regret not joining a sport. I especially regret not becoming a world-class gymnast. But those regrets are a bit old now, and I don't think about them as much because life is what it is now. My regrets these days are a lot smaller and a bit more manageable. In fact, I don't have nearly as many regrets as I used to. What I do regret, however, is getting so far behind in watching The Acolyte that I had to binge watch episodes 4 through 7 in one night in order to catch up in time for the season finale. Those are 2+ hours of my life I am never going to get back, and I sincerely regret losing them. The only thing I can say of those episodes is that thank God they are over. At best, they were painfully boring, and at worst, they were canon-breaking, lore-desecrating, politics-driven, community theater acting pieces of drivel found at the bottom of the TV guide beneath game shows and daytime dramas. Actually, that's not true. Game shows are far superior to The Acolyte. Steve Harvey could take on Smilo-Ren any day of the week, in my mind. But thankfully, I managed to get through them, and after I had done so, I went to bed with one declaration in mind. The Acolyte is the worst thing that Disney Star Wars has ever done. Now that's a pretty high bar to set, given that we have seen almost 10 years of near sludge from a once unstoppable IP. The Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2 and Andor notwithstanding. But those once good shows have kind of gotten lost among the trees of bad writing, abysmal characters, terrible plots, and utter pandering that we have received. So instead of waxing poetic about the serious ways in which this show is asinine drivel, I think we have all earned the right to have some fun with it. It's either that or get angry, and I'm kind of tired of wasting my energy on this. So let's dive right in. Master Indara, a renowned Jedi, is killed on a certain planet in the beginning of the show by a young, masked, dreadlocked woman who opens with lines like,
"Attack me with all your strength."
Most of us knew from the release of the trailer what we were in for, but did we really? A fight breaks out in the cantina between Assassin and Master, and I can see what they were going for with this. But with the wooden and stilted movements of Indara, the illogical force choices because reasons, and the fact that no Jedi can apparently multitask, Trinity ends up dead. And the fans, if there even still are those anymore, throw up their hands and call uncle. Thousands of miles away on a Trade Federation ship in deep space, a young woman who looks startlingly like the assassin is working as a mechanic. She is possessed by strange dreams and spends her day in deep space fixing engines and putting out space fires that somehow do not need oxygen to stay aflame. Not long after this, 2 Jedi arrive with a civilian in tow who claims that she is the killer of the Jedi Master and those in the cantina, even though we have no reason to believe the ship was anywhere near the planet at the time, and apparently the galaxy isn't filled with hundreds of thousands of humans and other species that the bartender could have mistaken her for. No, apparently this bartender has an eidetic memory, and instead of checking her mind like they literally did 15 seconds earlier in order to determine where Osha was, they take this as proof enough of her guilt, clap her in irons, and put her on a prison ship bound for Coruscant. Why they didn't simply interrogate her using the Force, or at the very least take her themselves, we will never know, but I don't think we're allowed to ask questions when watching the show. If we did, the whole thing falls apart like wet toilet paper. Long and short of it is, Master Squid Games over here is informed of Osha's guilt, as she was his former Padawan, and goes on a mission to retrieve her when it is discovered that the prison transport she was on had crash-landed on a snowy planet. He and Knight Dreadlocks, as well as Mini Wolverine, leave to retrieve Osha, find her after Osha has a dream sequence about her dead twin being alive again. Osha confesses this to Master Squid Games, and instead of checking her mind like convenience and logic would dictate that a trained Jedi would do, he simply says, "I believe you." I swear the whole of this show has been one big visual presentation of the phrase, "Trust me, bro." Episode 2 once more follows with the death of a Jedi Master, but this time by his own hand, once he is given a poison that May retrieved from Discount Ezra Miller. Pay attention to him, he's going to be mentioned a lot throughout this video. Once the Jedi Master is dead, Master Squid Games, Mini Wolverine, and Knight Dreadlocks attempt to deal with the problem by once again not reading Discount Ezra Miller's mind and determining that May was there by using Osha as bait. This is followed by another fight scene between Master Squid Games and May, whereupon the latter escapes, but not before some seriously painful eye contact is shared between the sisters. A promise of days gone by, and a lifetime of memories, and a shared pain, and whatever other torrent of gag-inducing angst this show can throw at us. Episode 3 and Episode 7 are essentially the same episode, just from different perspectives, which is not only hilarious, but also possibly the laziest form of creative expression that I have ever seen. Episode 3 follows both May and Osha when they were small on a planet called Brendok, as they are raised in a coven of lesbian space witches who for some reason aren't Night Sisters. May loves it there, Osha does not, and wants to get away for reasons that are not explained to the audience because that would require creativity and just general skill. For the sake of not torturing you further, I will simply say that the space witches want to conduct a ritual using the twins. Osha doesn't want to do it. The Jedi arrive and insist on testing the girls. May tells Osha to lie in the testing. Osha refuses and wants to go with the Jedi, even though it is never explained. Mother Anastasia invades a Padawan's mind because she's
a powerful leader. She's a powerful leader. Yes. In a very woman-centered world.
The twins are tested. May deliberately fails. Osha passes and wants to go with the Jedi. May is furious and the coven is torn. May decides to voice her discontent by locking Osha in her room and burning down the stone compound. The stone compound. Everyone in the coven somehow ends up dead for reasons that are not explained to us, and Osha leaves with the Jedi, believing her mother and twin are lost forever. Episode 4 kicks off with everyone wandering through a dense, nearly uninhabited jungle looking for a Wookiee Jedi Master that had dropped off the face of the galaxy years earlier. Do we know why? Of course not. But we're left to assume that it has something to do with the mysterious events of what I am now calling the Brendok incident 16 years earlier. May and Discount Ezra Miller arrive first and stomp around looking for the Wookiee, her being brooding and him being jittery and overly caffeinated. Not long after this, the Jedi arrive with Osha in tow, and the two paths of the group converge after May sets a trap for Discount Ezra Miller after a miraculous, almost bipolar level change of heart. Of course, that's when it is revealed that Discount Ezra Miller has actually been the villain Smilo Ren all along, and this results in a massive and somewhat impressive lightsaber battle between him and all of the Jedi. I will agree with everyone else that episode 5 was the best one of the show so far, but that's probably because there was next to no dialogue and very little plot. The moves were flashy, but unfortunately it's not enough to save Knight Dreadlocks and Mini Wolverine, who are killed by Smilo Ren. May and Osha reunite, where May knocks her sister out and takes her place so she can kill Sol, the last Jedi on her list, even though it was just 5 minutes ago that she was rushing to find the Wookiee Jedi so she could turn herself in. Oh, and she accomplishes acting like her sister by cutting off her long hair even though she has a tattoo on her forehead that makes her easily identifiable as the other twin. Osha gets taken by Smilo Ren, and the episode ends with both parties going their separate ways once more. Episode 6 has to be my favorite by far, however, because not only is it one of the most nonsensical, it's also the most hilarious. Osha wakes up in a cave on an unknown planet and immediately drinks the water that is left to her with no fear that it's been poisoned or tampered with. After this, she proceeds to explore and stumbles across Smilo Ren sauntering down the rocky shoreline like he's on his own personal catwalk. She follows him to a calm cove where he proceeds to strip down to his birthday suit in full view of her and dives into the water. You know, you really gotta get a laugh out of people saying, "This show is for kids. No wonder you don't like it." Because the show's villain exposing himself to the main character after he murders a friend in front of her really screams kids show. And what is it with this show and the partial nudity of the males constantly? A few episodes ago, we had Knight Dreadlocks ironing his robes half naked for some reason in the middle of one of the ships. There was absolutely no reason plot-wise for something like this to happen other than Leslie Headland wanting to portray the Jedi as quirky and weird, just like everybody else. And then, if that wasn't enough, with this episode, the villain whisks the main character away to a private island and proceeds to get naked in front of her. Is this supposed to appeal to the two females besides me that are actually watching this show? Because if it is, then the pandering seriously needs some work. Of course, it's later revealed in the episode that Smilo is obsessed with power, like any of the Sith are, even though at this point the Sith haven't been seen in 1,000 years. Oh, and he also wants to find some sort of queen to rule with, and expresses that in the phrase, the power of two. I suppose at the very least we can be thankful that Smilo and Osha didn't have some bizarre force bond like Rey and Ben Solo had, but those are very small mercies. It's quite obvious that both men are attempting as hard as they can to seduce these women they are in close proximity to, and because of incompetent writing, they will likely succeed, even though they are murderers, megalomaniacs, and tyrants. It's also quite obvious that power and seduction are synonymous in this show, as Leslie Headland seems to be obsessed with relationship dynamics and male versus female. It reminds me of some trends I see on TikTok sometimes, specifically those girls who are obsessed with villain romances. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase, the hero will sacrifice you to save the world, but the villain will sacrifice the world to save you. Sweetheart, he's a villain. You mean nothing to him. If it's the world and all the power he can gain from it, you can bet the inheritance that you wish you had on you being tossed away like yesterday's day-old bagel. It's this whole I can fix him mindset that drives me absolutely crazy. But more than that, it's the obsession with toxic relationships and dark characters promoting lust and desire about Star Wars lately that just have my jaw on the floor. And what's worse, Osha is going to fall for it. We knew that the minute he gave her a private showing and she didn't look at his face. Smilo will get away with every single one of his crimes. Some bizarre force sexualized fantasy will happen that makes all of us curl our toes in the end. The less said about episode 7, the better. Between a Jedi who is bizarrely attached to a girl that he just met, witches who can turn into smoke demons, a Wookiee that is possessed by a cult, and the kidnapping of a child, well, I just don't want to think about this anymore. And finally, we reach the finale, which is filled with fights that are more reminiscent of Avatar: The Last Airbender than anything really Star Wars related. Something I've noticed about this show is that accusations will be hurled about the actions of the other person, and the characters will simply ignore them when using the logic of the situation would just resolve the conflict faster. All 4 characters arrive on the planet, and Sol engages Smilo Ren in a fight while May engages Osha. The former fight was more interesting, however, it utilizes the Force in very liberal and bizarre ways, making it seem as if Sol is an airbender more than a Jedi. There was a strange mixture of kung fu as well that just had me rolling my eyes the whole time. Oh, and did I mention that Smilo Ren and May can apparently teleport too? That's a convenient power to have. Somehow they can do it without turning into scary smoke demons. May uses this power to escape Osha and throw herself into the fight between Sol and Smilo Ren. Because, convenience and reasons. She manages to disarm him and he confesses to killing their mother while Osha watches in the background. Upon hearing this, Osha flies into a rage and chokes Sol to death. At least that's what it looked like. Meanwhile, the Jedi accompanied by Master Vernestra arrives on the planet and begins their search for Sol and the others. Vernestra senses Smilo Ren and recognizes him. The twins escape to the sacred tree where Smilo Ren finds them, and instead of the 3 of them escaping together, which is the most logical course of action, Smilo Ren once again says, I don't accept the Force logic, and offers to erase May's memories so the Jedi can't find Osha and Smilo, and Osha agrees to go with Smilo and be his apprentice. You literally cannot make this up. Although apparently Leslie Headland certainly can. And has. We end the episode, and thankfully the season, with the 2 lovebirds escaping to go on their honeymoon on an unknown planet, and the 3rd, now amnesiac murderer, is taken into Jedi custody and used as a sort of cover-up for the internal audit the Senate is launching into their order. And of course, Vernestra comforts and consoles amnesiac May, even though 2 of her colleagues were murdered by her hand. At this point, they're all murderers, and Osha killing her former master in some strange way in the mind of Headland would be embodying the rule of 2 somehow. And therefore, this is Star Wars in her mind. The Force in this show is both blown wildly out of proportion and at the same time not used at all in circumstances where it would be most prudent to use it. I don't know how Leslie Headland justified half of her choices in Force usage here, but she either thought the audience would be too stupid to notice, or they just wouldn't care. I can't. I'm so glad this show is over, and all I can do is hope and pray that the ratings are so bad that we never have to see anything like this on television ever again. But what are your thoughts on the season finale of The Acolyte? Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section below, and let the conversations begin. Until next time, everyone.